Welcome, dear listener, to Mystic Bedtime Stories. I'm your narrator tonight, and I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend these quiet evening hours with us. Here, we journey together through the forgotten corridors of history, where ancient wisdom whispers across the centuries, carrying you gently toward peaceful rest. Tonight, we travel back over 2,000 years, to a time when the Mediterranean Sea sparkled under the endless African sun, and one magnificent city stood as the beacon of all human knowledge. Close your eyes now, if you haven't already, and let your breathing slow as we begin our journey to Alexandria, the lost jewel of the ancient world. Picture yourself standing on warm golden sand, feeling a gentle evening breeze carrying the salt scent of the sea. The sun is beginning to set over the harbor, painting the sky in soft shades of amber and rose. Before you rises a city unlike any other that has ever existed, where the greatest minds of antiquity once walked, where scrolls containing the secrets of the universe were carefully preserved in halls of learning that seemed to stretch toward the heavens themselves. This is Alexandria, founded by Alexander the Great, nurtured by the Ptolemies, and home to the most magnificent library the world has ever known. Tonight, we'll walk through its marble corridors, sit beside its scholars as they work by lamplight, and discover the profound wisdom that once filled over 400,000 precious scrolls. We'll learn what treasures were lost when flames consumed centuries of human achievement, and perhaps, in understanding what was taken from us, we'll find a deeper appreciation for the knowledge we still carry forward. But more than a story of loss, this is a tale of the eternal human spirit, our endless curiosity about the cosmos and our place within it. As you settle more comfortably now, feeling your muscles relax and your mind grow quiet, know that you're about to embark on a journey that connects you to every seeker of truth who has ever lived, every scholar who has ever wondered, every soul who has ever looked up at the stars and asked the timeless question, why? Let the worries of your day drift away like ships disappearing over the horizon. Release any tension you're holding in your shoulders, your jaw, your hands. Breathe deeply, and with each breath, allow yourself to travel further back in time, until the modern world fades completely and you find yourself approaching the gates of the greatest center of learning our world has ever known. The evening air in Alexandria carries the scent of papyrus and ink, of exotic spices from distant lands, and of the sea that has witnessed the rise and fall of empires. You can hear the gentle lapping of waves against the harbor stones, the distant call of merchants closing their shops for the day, and somewhere in the distance, the soft sound of scrolls being carefully unrolled by scholars working late into the night. This is where our story begins, in a place where East met West, where the wisdom of Egypt merged with the philosophy of Greece, where the mathematics of Babylon found harmony with the astronomy of Persia. Here, in this crossroads of civilization, stood humanity's first and greatest attempt to gather all knowledge under one roof, to create a library that would preserve the accumulated wisdom of every culture, every tradition, every brilliant mind that had ever contributed to our understanding of existence. Take another deep breath now, and as you do, step with me through the great entrance of the Library of Alexandria. Feel the cool marble beneath your feet. See the towering columns reaching toward painted ceilings that depicted the journey of the sun across the sky, the phases of the moon, and the eternal dance of the planets. This is a place where time moves, more slowly, where wisdom whispers on every breeze, where the past and present merge into something timeless and profound. Are you ready to discover what wonders once filled these halls? Are you prepared to learn what we gained, what we lost, and what echoes still call to us across the centuries? Then settle in, dear friend, for tonight we explore not just a library, but the very heart of human aspiration, the eternal flame of curiosity that no fire could ever truly extinguish. Our first chapter awaits, and with it, the story of a city that dared to dream It could contain all the knowledge of the world. In the year 331 before the Common Era, a young man, not yet 30 years old, stood on the shores of the Mediterranean, gazing out at waters that reflected his boundless ambition. Alexander of Macedon, whom history would remember as Alexander the Great, had already conquered much of the known world, but here, on the Egyptian coast, he envisioned something different. Not just another military victory, but a city that would outlive empires, a place where knowledge itself would be the greatest treasure. Allow yourself to see through Alexander's eyes now, as he walked along the sandy coastline where the Nile Delta meets the endless sea. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dunes, and the gentle rhythm of waves provided a soundtrack to his dreams. He could see it all in his mind. Wide boulevards lined with marble columns, harbors filled with ships from every corner of the world, and at its heart, a center of learning that would draw the wisest minds of every nation. This was to be Alexandria, named for its founder, but destined to become far greater than any single person. Feel the warm sand between your toes as we walk with Alexander through his vision, watching as he gestured to his architects and engineers, describing broad streets that would run straight as arrows, intersecting at perfect angles, creating a grid that would organize not just the flow of people and commerce, but the very pursuit of knowledge itself. Alexander died young, as bright flames often do, but his dream lived on in the capable hands of Ptolemy, one of his most trusted generals and friends. Ptolemy understood that while armies could conquer territories, only wisdom could conquer time itself. As you breathe slowly and deeply, imagine Ptolemy standing in the same spot where Alexander had dreamed, but now seeing the early foundations of that dream taking shape in stone and marble dot under Ptolemy's guidance. Alexandria grew not as a typical ancient city, but as something entirely new. The streets were wider than those of Athens or Rome, designed to accommodate not just chariots and merchants, but the constant flow of scholars, students, and seekers of truth who had come from every corner of the known world. The architecture blended Egyptian grandeur with Greek elegance, creating spaces that felt both majestic and welcoming, both ancient and revolutionary. Picture yourself walking down the Via Canopica, Alexandria's great central avenue, as it appeared in those early days of wonder. The street stretches for miles in either direction, lined with porticos that provide shade from the African sun. The columns are carved from the finest marble, each one unique, telling stories in stone of gods and heroes, mathematicians and philosophers, astronomers and physicians. Between the columns, bronze statues catch the morning light, depicting not conquerors and kings, but thinkers and teachers, those who had expanded the boundaries of human understanding. The morning air carries a dozen languages as merchants, scholars, and travelers from across the Mediterranean world conduct their business. You hear Greek mixed with Egyptian, Latin blending with Hebrew, Persian mingling with Ethiopian tongues. This is perhaps the first truly cosmopolitan city in human history, where a person's worth is measured not by the accident of their birth, but by the depth of their wisdom and the originality of their ideas. As you continue your gentle walk through these ancient streets, notice how different this city feels from others of its time. There's less emphasis on military might and more on intellectual achievement. The statues honor poets alongside generals. The public buildings include lecture halls alongside temples. And everywhere you look, you see evidence of a civilization that has chosen to invest its wealth not in monuments to power, but in monuments to learning. The harbor comes into view now, and what a sight it is. Ships from every nation known to the ancient world rock gently at anchor. Phoenician vessels with their distinctive curved prows rest beside Roman galleys. Egyptian boats with triangular sails share the waters with strange craft from distant India, their holds filled with spices, silks, and most precious of all, scrolls and books from far-off lands. But perhaps the most remarkable sight of all is the great lighthouse, the Pharos of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Rising over 400 feet into the sky, its white marble surface gleams in the sunlight, visible to ships still miles out at sea. At night, fires burn at its peak, guiding vessels safely to harbor, but the lighthouse serves as more than a navigational aid. It stands as a symbol of Alexandria's true purpose, to be a beacon of knowledge, a light that guides not just ships, but human understanding itself toward safe harbor. Take a moment to gaze up at this architectural marvel, feeling the warmth of warmth, the sun on your face, and the gentle sea breeze in your hair. The lighthouse seems to stretch toward the heavens, connecting earth and sky, matter and spirit, the known and the unknowable. In its shadow, scholars from dozens of nations work side by side, united not by politics or religion, but by their shared commitment to understanding the mysteries of existence. This is the Alexandria that Ptolemy I created, but it would be his son, Ptolemy II, who would truly fulfill Alexander's vision. The second Ptolemy understood that a great city needed more than beautiful buildings and busy harbors. It needed a soul, a central purpose that would define its character for centuries to come. And so, in the heart of this magnificent city, he began construction of something the world had never seen before, a universal library, a place where all human knowledge would be gathered, preserved, and shared as evening approaches in our ancient Alexandria. The setting sun paints the marble buildings in shades of gold and rose. The day's heat gives way to the cool embrace of Mediterranean breezes, and throughout the city, oil lamps begin to flicker to life in windows and doorways. But the most beautiful sight of all is the warm glow beginning to emanate from the great complex rising near the harbor, where the first scrolls are already being carefully arranged on cedar shelves, where the first scholars are already bent over their work, where humanity's greatest adventure in learning is about to begin. Feel yourself drawn toward that gentle light, that promise of wisdom and wonder. Tomorrow, we'll explore the dream that would become the great Library of Alexandria. But tonight, let yourself rest in this moment of perfect possibility, when the future stretched ahead like an unwritten scroll, waiting for the stories yet to be told. As dawn breaks over Alexandria, painting the marble facades in soft hues of pink and gold, we find ourselves standing before what would become humanity's most ambitious undertaking. Ptolemy II, known to history as Ptolemy Philadelphus, walks slowly through the construction site of his greatest dream. The morning air is cool and sweet, carrying the scent of jasmine from the royal gardens and the distant aroma of bread baking in the city's ovens. Allow your breathing to slow as we accompany this visionary ruler through the half-built corridors of what will become the great library. His footsteps echo softly against marble floors, still dusty from the stonecutter's work. But in his mind's eye, he can already see what this place will become. Not merely a repository for scrolls, but a living temple to human curiosity. A place where every question ever asked might someday find its answer. Ptolemy pauses before a wall where architects have sketched their plans in charcoal. The design is breathtaking in its scope and ambition. The main library building will rise 3 stories high, its reading rooms capable of holding thousands of scholars at once. Connected to it by covered walkways will be lecture halls, laboratories for studying anatomy and astronomy, botanical gardens for medical research, and workshop spaces where scribes will labor to copy the precious texts that arrive daily from across the known world. But the most revolutionary aspect of Ptolemy's vision is not the buildings themselves, magnificent though they will be. It is the idea that drives their creation, the belief that all human knowledge, regardless of its origin, deserves to be preserved and studied. In an age when most rulers collected gold and jewels, Ptolemy chose to collect something far more precious and infinitely more rare wisdom itself. Feel the weight of this moment as Ptolemy turns to his chief librarian, a brilliant scholar named Demetrius of Phalerum, who has been tasked with making this impossible dream a reality. Together, they walk through rooms that will soon house scrolls from Egypt and Greece, from Babylon and Persia, from India and lands so distant that their very names sound like poetry. The morning light streams through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that dance like golden thoughts waiting to be captured and preserved. Demetrius unfurls a papyrus scroll on which he has been calculating the scope of their undertaking. His estimates are staggering. They hope to collect not hundreds, but hundreds of thousands of texts. Every ship that enters Alexandria's harbor will be searched, and any books or scrolls found aboard will be confiscated, copied by skilled scribes, and then returned to their owners along with handsome compensation. The copies will remain forever in the library, ensuring that no knowledge, however obscure its origin, will be lost to time. As you listen to their planning, let yourself imagine the magnitude of this vision. They are not simply building a library. They are attempting to create a mirror of the human mind itself, a place where every thought ever committed to writing will find its home. Mathematics from India will rest beside poetry from Greece. Egyptian medical texts will share shelf space with Babylonian astronomy. Persian philosophy will dialogue across the centuries with Hebrew wisdom. The construction continues around them as they speak, and the sound of chisels on stone creates a gentle, rhythmic background to their conversation. Skilled craftsmen from across the Mediterranean have come to Alexandria to contribute their talents to this unprecedented project. You can hear the soft scraping of smoothing stones against marble, the distant ring of metal tools, and the quiet conversations of workers who understand they are building something that will outlast empires. Ptolemy and Demetrius move into what will become the main reading room, a vast hall with ceilings so high they seem to reach toward the heavens themselves. Windows on three sides will fill the space with natural light, while bronze oil lamps will extend the hours of study deep into the night. Along the walls, cedar shelving rises from floor to ceiling, waiting to cradle the wisdom of ages. But perhaps the most remarkable feature of all is the cataloging system they have devised. Every single scroll will be carefully recorded, its contents summarized, its author noted, its origin preserved. For the first time in human history, knowledge will be organized not by the wealth or power of those who created it, but by its subject matter and significance. A farmer's observations about crop rotation might sit beside a king's treatise on governance, valued equally for the truths they contain. As the morning progresses and the sun climbs higher in the sky, more scholars arrive to witness the construction of their future workplace. There is Eratosthenes, the man who will calculate the circumference of the earth using only shadows and geometry. There is Herophilos, who will make groundbreaking discoveries about human anatomy. There is Euclid, whose work on mathematics will still be studied over 2,000 years later. Watch them as they walk through these future halls of learning, their faces bright with anticipation. They understand that they are participating in something unprecedented, something that will change not just their own lives, but the entire trajectory of human knowledge. In their conversations, you can hear the excitement of minds that know they are about to have access to the accumulated wisdom of every civilization that has ever flourished. The afternoon brings new arrivals, a caravan from the east, loaded with scrolls written in languages barely known in Alexandria. Persian texts on mathematics, Indian treatises on medicine, philosophical works from lands so distant that their customs seem like tales from another world. Each arrival is greeted with celebration, for every new scroll brings the library closer to its goal of universal knowledge. As evening approaches, Ptolemy climbs to the highest floor of the rising library and looks out over his city. Alexandria stretches in all directions, its white buildings gleaming in the setting sun, its harbors filled with ships from every corner of the known world. But what fills him with the greatest satisfaction is not the wealth these ships bring, or the tribute they carry, but the knowledge they contain. Every day, his dream grows closer to reality. The workers begin to pack away their tools as darkness falls, but inside the partially completed library, scribes continue their work by lamplight. The soft scratch of reed pens on papyrus creates a gentle whisper that seems to echo from the future, a promise of all the wisdom yet to be preserved. They work with careful precision, knowing that every character they inscribe brings humanity closer to a treasure more valuable than gold or silver. Let yourself drift now with the evening breeze that carries the sound of their work through the open windows. Feel the profound peace of a day well spent in service of something greater than any individual ambition. Tomorrow will bring new scrolls, new discoveries, new additions to humanity's growing treasury of knowledge. But tonight, rest in the satisfaction of dreams taking shape, of visions becoming reality, of a world growing brighter with each word, carefully preserved for future generations. The stars begin to appear overhead, those same stars that scholars in the library will study and catalog, whose movements they will predict with stunning accuracy. Even now, in these early days of construction, the great Library of Alexandria is already changing the world, attracting brilliant minds like moths to the flame of learning, creating connections between cultures that have never before shared their deepest insights. Sleep now, knowing that you have witnessed the birth of humanity's greatest treasure house of wisdom, where seekers of truth will soon find their eternal home. As the first light of dawn filters through the tall windows of the great library, we find ourselves in the company of extraordinary souls who have dedicated their lives to understanding the mysteries of existence. The morning air is filled with the gentle rustle of papyrus scrolls and the soft murmur of voices engaged in discussions that will echo through eternity. These are the guardians of knowledge, the scholars who transform the library from a mere collection of texts into a living, breathing center of human enlightenment. Let your breathing slow and deepen as we walk quietly through the reading halls, where brilliant minds from across the ancient world have gathered. The marble floors are worn smooth by the footsteps of countless seekers, and the walls seem to pulse with the accumulated wisdom of generations. Here, in these sacred spaces, knowledge is not hoarded, but shared, not guarded, but explored, not feared, but celebrated. In the mathematics section, we encounter a figure whose work will survive long after the library's walls have crumbled to dust. Euclid of Alexandria sits at a cedar table, surrounded by scrolls covered in geometric diagrams. The morning light catches the bronze stylus in his hand as he carefully draws perfect circles in precise angles, laying the foundation for a system of mathematical truth that will guide human understanding for over 2 millennia. Watch him work with the patience of ages, his weathered fingers tracing lines that represent eternal principles. There is something deeply peaceful about his concentration, the way he loses himself in the pure logic of numbers and shapes. His breathing is steady and calm as he contemplates relationships between points and lines that exist beyond time, beyond culture, beyond the rise and fall of empires. In his quiet devotion to mathematical truth, we see reflected humanity's deepest longing to understand the order that underlies all existence. Moving deeper into the library's corridors, we come upon another guardian of wisdom, though his domain is the human body rather than abstract mathematics. Herophilos of Chalcedon bends over anatomical drawings, his careful observations revolutionizing medicine and healing. The oil lamp beside him casts dancing shadows across scrolls that detail the intricate workings of the heart, the pathways of nerves, the delicate structure of the eye. Feel the reverence in his approach as he studies texts from Egypt and India, comparing ancient wisdom with his own careful observations. There is no arrogance in his manner, only the humble recognition that understanding the human form requires patience, precision, and above all, respect for the mystery of life itself. His work here will save countless lives in centuries yet too. Come, but in this moment, he is simply a seeker of truth, grateful for the opportunity to add his small contribution to humanity's growing understanding of itself. The afternoon sun slants through the western windows as we discover perhaps the most remarkable of all the library's scholars. Eratosthenes of Cyrene stands before a large map of the known world, but his mind encompasses something far grander than earthly geography. Using nothing more than shadows, angles, and the pure power of geometric reasoning, he is calculating the circumference of our entire planet. His method is elegant in its simplicity, profound in its implications. Allow yourself to marvel at the quiet confidence with which he works. No satellites guide his measurements. No modern instruments aid his calculations. Yet his results will prove remarkably accurate. There is something deeply moving about witnessing a human mind reach across hundreds of miles of territory to grasp a truth about the very world we inhabit. In his patient calculations, we see the power of reason to transcend the limitations of direct experience, to touch truths as vast as the earth itself. As evening approaches, the library takes on a different character. The harsh light of day gives way to the warm glow of oil lamps, and the scholars who have been working in solitude begin to gather in small groups. The conversations that arise are like nothing the world has ever heard before. A physician from Egypt discusses the circulation of blood with a philosopher from Greece. A mathematician from Babylon shares insights with an astronomer from Persia. Knowledge flows between cultures like water, finding its level, each tradition enriching and being enriched by contact with others. Listen to the gentle murmur of their voices as they debate questions that have puzzled humanity since consciousness first dawned. What is the nature of light? How do the planets move through the heavens? What causes disease, and how can it be cured? Their discussions continue late into the night, fueled not by ambition or competition, but by pure love of understanding, by the joy that comes from sharing discoveries with minds capable of appreciating their significance. In the translation chambers, we encounter another group of unsung heroes. Scholars who speak multiple languages work tirelessly to render texts from one tongue into another, ensuring that wisdom born in one culture can enlighten minds across the world. Watch them as they struggle to find Greek words for Persian concepts, Latin phrases for Egyptian ideas, Hebrew expressions for Indian insights. Their work requires not just linguistic skill, but deep cultural empathy, the ability to understand how different peoples comprehend the same universal truths. The night deepens, but still they work. Some copy precious texts that are wearing thin with age, their careful penmanship ensuring that future generations will have access to ancient wisdom. Others compile indexes and catalogs, creating the organizational systems that will help scholars find exactly the knowledge they seek among the library's vast holdings. Still others engage in original research, building upon the foundations laid by earlier thinkers, adding their own insights to humanity's ever-growing tower of understanding. There is something profoundly peaceful about watching these guardians of knowledge at their work. They seek no earthly rewards for their labors, no monuments to their memory, no songs to celebrate their achievements. Their satisfaction comes from the work itself, from the knowledge that they are participating in humanity's greatest collaborative enterprise, the patient, persistent, never-ending quest to understand the mysteries of existence. As midnight approaches, the library grows. Quiet but never truly sleeps. A few scholars continue reading by lamplight, lost in texts that transport them across centuries and continents. The night watchmen make their rounds, protecting not gold or jewels, but something far more precious, the accumulated wisdom of human civilization. Even the silence seems alive with possibility, pregnant with discoveries yet to be made, insights yet to be shared. Feel yourself settling into this profound quiet, this temple of learning where knowledge is revered as the highest treasure the guardians of wisdom work on, their dedication ensuring that the light of understanding will continue to burn even through the darkest ages. Their patient scholarship creates ripples that will spread across centuries, touching lives and minds in ways they could never imagine. Rest now in their company, surrounded by the gentle presence of souls devoted to truth and understanding. Tomorrow will bring new questions to explore, new texts to study, new connections to discover between the wisdom traditions of the world. But tonight, let yourself be held by the peaceful dedication of these guardians of knowledge, these quiet heroes who ensure that humanity's greatest treasures will survive to inspire future generations. In their patient work, we see reflected the best of human nature, curiosity without cynicism, ambition wedded to humility, and above all, the recognition that true wealth lies not in what we possess, but in what we understand and can share with others. As morning mist rises from the Mediterranean and drifts through the library's open courtyards, we find ourselves standing before the true treasure of Alexandria, not the marble columns or bronze statues, but the countless scrolls that line the walls from floor to vaulted ceiling. Each papyrus cylinder contains a universe of thought, a lifetime of observation, a fragment of humanity's eternal conversation with mystery and wonder. Let your breathing grow soft and regular as we move deeper into these halls of preserved wisdom. The air carries the faint scent of papyrus and cedar, of ink made from lampblack and gum, of the patient devotion of countless scribes who have labored to capture fleeting thoughts in permanent form. Here, in these quiet corridors, rest secrets that will reshape human understanding, insights that leap across centuries, like sparks jumping between kindred minds. We begin our exploration in the astronomy section, where scrolls bear witness to humanity's earliest attempts to read the language of the stars. Unfurled carefully on reading tables are texts that map the movements of planets with stunning precision, predicting eclipses with accuracy that will not be matched again for over 1,000 years. Watch as a scholar traces his finger along calculations that reveal the Earth's place in a cosmic dance far grander than most humans have ever imagined. These ancient astronomers saw patterns where others saw chaos, found mathematical harmonies in the seemingly random wanderings of celestial bodies. Their patient observations, recorded night after night across generations, reveal truths about time and space that feel almost magical in their prescience. Some scrolls describe mechanical devices for calculating planetary positions, marvels of bronze and gear that anticipate by centuries the clockwork universe that later thinkers will discover. Moving to the medical texts, we encounter knowledge that seems to spring from a different world entirely. Here are detailed anatomical drawings that reveal intimate understanding of the human heart, maps of blood vessels traced with stunning accuracy, descriptions of surgical procedures that demonstrate sophisticated knowledge of healing arts. Ancient Egyptian physicians documented their observations of disease and recovery, creating a medical literature that preserves insights lost and found repeatedly throughout history. Feel the reverence with which scholars handle these healing texts, understanding that each scroll represents not just abstract knowledge, but the accumulated experience of healers who eased suffering and saved lives across centuries of practice. Some describe herbs and their properties, wisdom gathered from distant lands, where plants unknown to the Mediterranean world offered cures for ailments that plagued humanity everywhere. Others detail the delicate art of surgery, procedures that required not just knowledge, but courage, skill, and profound respect for the sacred mystery of life itself. In the mathematics section, scrolls reveal the elegant beauty of pure thought. Given form. Here are geometric proofs that demonstrate eternal truths about circles and triangles, algebraic methods for solving problems that will challenge minds for millennia to come. Ancient Babylonian texts show mathematical sophistication. That seems almost impossible for their era. Calculations that manipulate numbers of astronomical size with casual precision. Allow yourself to marvel at the mental worlds these scrolls preserve. Mathematicians who lived and died centuries before Alexandria was founded left behind insights that still illuminate the hidden structures underlying all existence. Their work reveals the profound human capacity to perceive abstract relationships, to find beauty in logical necessity, to discover in pure reasoning a kind of cosmic harmony that transcends the apparent chaos of daily experience. The philosophical texts perhaps hold the deepest mysteries of all. Here rest the meditations of minds that probe the fundamental questions of existence with fearless honesty and startling originality. Scrolls from India explore the nature of consciousness itself, describing states of awareness that modern psychology is only beginning to rediscover. Persian texts examine the relationship between good and evil with psychological subtlety that anticipates insights not formally recognized until our own era. Greek philosophical works display the awesome power of rational inquiry unleashed upon the deepest puzzles of human existence. What is justice? What constitutes a life well lived? How should societies organize themselves to promote human flourishing? The answers preserved in these scrolls represent centuries of careful thought, refined through countless debates and discussions, tested against the complexities of actual experience. As afternoon light slants through the library's western windows, we discover texts that reveal the ancient world's startling technological sophistication. Engineering scrolls describe machines of incredible complexity, automatic theaters where mechanical figures acted out entire plays, steam-powered devices that anticipated the Industrial Revolution by 15 centuries, calculating machines that performed mathematical operations with gear-driven precision. These technological marvels were not mere curiosities, but expressions of minds that understood principles of physics and engineering with remarkable clarity. Some scrolls describe architectural techniques that allowed builders to construct domes and arches of unprecedented size, methods that were forgotten and painfully rediscovered centuries later. Others reveal navigation techniques that guided ancient mariners across vast oceanic distances using only celestial observations and mathematical calculation. The evening brings us to perhaps the most poignant discoveries of all. Texts that preserve entire worlds now lost to time. Languages that no longer echo in human throats live on in these scrolls, carrying stories, poems, prayers, and wisdom from civilizations that have vanished so completely that only these written traces confirm they ever existed at all. Here are the voices of peoples whose very names have been forgotten, yet whose insights into the human condition remain as fresh and relevant as if they were written yesterday. Some scrolls preserve creation myths that reveal how different cultures understood their place in the cosmic order. Others contain epic poems that celebrate heroes whose deeds inspired entire nations, stories that shaped the moral imagination of civilizations for centuries. Still others hold the practical wisdom of farmers and craftsmen, knowledge of soil and season, of metal and wood, of the patient skills required to coax beauty and utility from the raw materials of the world. As darkness falls and oil lamps begin to flicker throughout the library, we encounter the most mysterious texts of all, scrolls that contain knowledge we can no longer fully understand. Mathematical theorems whose proofs have been lost, descriptions of natural phenomena that seem to anticipate scientific discoveries not made until modern times. Philosophical insights that point toward truths we are only beginning to glimpse. These enigmatic texts remind us that human knowledge is not a straight line of progress, but a complex web of discovery, loss, and rediscovery. Ancient minds sometimes perceived truths that later generations forgot, developed techniques that were abandoned and had to be painfully reinvented, asked questions that we are only now learning how to answer properly. Rest now among these treasured scrolls, surrounded by the accumulated wisdom of our species. Each text represents a human life dedicated to understanding, a mind that chose to seek truth rather than comfort, insight rather than certainty. In their patient work, these ancient thinkers created a legacy that transcends the boundaries of time and culture, speaking directly to anyone willing to listen with an open heart and curious mind. The scrolls sleep peacefully in their cedar cases, but the thoughts they contain remain eternally alive, ready to spark new insights in minds yet unborn. Tomorrow we will learn how tragically much of this wisdom was lost, but tonight let yourself be comforted by the knowledge that human curiosity, once awakened, can never be entirely extinguished. Even when libraries burn and civilizations fall, the questions these ancient seekers asked continue to echo in new minds, inspiring fresh searches for truth and understanding that connect us across the centuries to the eternal human quest for meaning and wisdom. As we continue our peaceful journey through the ancient halls of Alexandria, let us pause for a moment and imagine ourselves standing on the marble steps of the great library as the sun begins to set. The Mediterranean breeze carries with it the familiar sense of papyrus and ink, the gentle murmur of scholars discussing their latest discoveries, and something else, ... something that would change the course of human knowledge forever. Picture, if you will, the year 48 before the Common Era. The Library of Alexandria has stood as humanity's greatest treasure house of wisdom for nearly 3 centuries. Its corridors have echoed with the footsteps of the most brilliant minds the world has ever known. Scrolls containing the secrets of mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy line countless shelves, reaching toward the painted ceiling like silent sentries, guarding humanity's intellectual heritage. But the world outside these peaceful walls is changing. The Roman Republic, that mighty force that has been growing stronger with each passing decade, now stretches its influence across the Mediterranean. Political tensions simmer like oil, waiting for a spark. The once stable Ptolemaic dynasty that has protected and nurtured the library finds itself caught in the currents of Roman civil war. Let us drift closer to that fateful year when Julius Caesar, the ambitious Roman general, finds himself pursuing his rival Pompey across the ancient world. Can you imagine the weight of decisions made in those days? Each choice rippling outward like stones thrown into still water, creating waves that would reach far beyond any single lifetime. Caesar arrives in Alexandria not as a conqueror seeking knowledge, but as a man caught in the complexities of war and politics. He becomes entangled in the succession dispute between Cleopatra and her younger brother Ptolemy XIII. The library, that haven of peaceful contemplation, suddenly finds itself uncomfortably close to the machinations of power and ambition. Breathe deeply and let yourself settle into this ancient scene. The scholars continue their work, perhaps unaware of the gathering storm. They bend over their precious scrolls by lamplight, carefully copying texts, debating philosophical points, making calculations that would influence human thought for generations to come. The gentle scratching of reed pens on papyrus fills the quiet evening air. But outside, tension builds like pressure in a sealed vessel. Caesar finds himself trapped in the royal palace, hemmed in by Egyptian ships loyal to young Ptolemy. The harbor, usually a place of peaceful commerce and scholarly exchange, becomes a strategic battleground. Warships crowd the water where merchant vessels once brought precious cargo of books and manuscripts from distant lands. In moments of crisis, we often make decisions based on immediate necessity, not seeing the larger consequences that will unfold. Caesar, a brilliant military strategist, but perhaps not a man who fully grasped the value of the scrolls housed so nearby, makes a tactical choice that will echo through history. To break free from his predicament and prevent enemy reinforcements from reaching the harbor, he orders his soldiers to set fire to the Egyptian fleet. Close your eyes and try to imagine the scene as it might have unfolded on that distant evening. The Roman soldiers, following orders, hurl burning brands toward the ships anchored in the harbor. The flames catch quickly on the wooden vessels, their sails and rigging providing perfect fuel for the growing conflagration. But fire, that ancient force that gave humans light and warmth, also possesses a wild, unpredictable nature. It does not respect the boundaries we draw or the value we place on things. The flames that began on the ships do not stay contained to the water. Fanned by the Mediterranean winds that have blown across this coast for millennia, the fire spreads to the wooden docks, then to the warehouses, and to the buildings beyond. Some ancient sources tell us that the wind carried burning embers like tiny messengers of destruction, each one capable of igniting something precious and irreplaceable. The fire spreads along the harbor district, consuming everything in its path with an appetite that seems almost alive. And there, standing majestically near the harbor, its vast halls filled with humanity's greatest intellectual treasures, waits the great Library of Alexandria. Can you picture the moment when the first wisps of smoke begin to drift through its corridors? The moment when scholars, deep in their work, first catch the scent of burning wood and realize that danger approaches. Their sanctuary? Perhaps some of the librarians and scholars react quickly, rushing to save what they can. Imagine them gathering armfuls of precious scrolls, trying to carry centuries of accumulated wisdom to safety. But there are so many manuscripts, so many irreplaceable works, and time is running short. The fire does not distinguish between a merchant's inventory and humanity's greatest intellectual achievements. It consumes papyrus with the same indifferent hunger, whether it contains a shopping list or the most profound philosophical insights of Aristotle. Ancient sources suggest that thousands upon thousands of scrolls are lost in that single catastrophic event. Let your mind drift to what those flames consumed. Mathematical treatises that might have accelerated human understanding of the universe by centuries. Medical texts containing treatments and insights that could have saved countless lives. Astronomical observations that mapped the heavens with precision we would not achieve again for generations. Historical records of civilizations whose stories are now lost to us forever. Think of the individual scrolls, each one representing years of careful thought and observation. A mathematician's lifetime work on geometric principles reduced to ash in minutes. A physician's detailed observations about human anatomy, gathered through years of careful study, disappearing in a puff of smoke. A historian's account of distant lands and peoples, containing details we can now only imagine. The scholars who witnessed this catastrophe must have felt as though they were watching the death of memory itself. These were people who understood the true value of what was being lost. They knew that many of the works burning before their eyes existed nowhere else in the world. There were no printing presses, no digital backups, often no other copies. When a scroll burned, the knowledge it contained might vanish from human awareness forever. As you rest here in the comfort of your own space, try to imagine the profound sadness of such a moment. It would be as if all the libraries, universities, and research institutions of our modern world suddenly disappeared in a single afternoon. Generations of human curiosity, investigation, and wisdom simply gone. But the most tragic aspect of this loss is not just what disappeared, but what might have been. Consider the momentum of human discovery that existed in ancient Alexandria. Scholars there had already calculated the circumference of the earth with remarkable accuracy. They had developed steam engines, created mechanical calculators, mapped the stars, and begun to understand human anatomy. What if the knowledge contained in those burning scrolls had been preserved and built upon? What if the mathematical insights, the technological innovations, the scientific observations had continued to accumulate and develop without interruption? We might have reached the moon centuries earlier, conquered diseases that plagued humanity for millennia, or developed technologies we cannot even imagine. The fire that spread from Caesar's tactical decision represents one of history's great turning points, a moment when human knowledge took a step backward instead of forward. It reminds us how fragile our accumulated wisdom really is, how much we depend on the careful preservation and transmission of ideas from one generation to the next. Yet, as you settle deeper into relaxation, consider that this tragedy also contains a profound lesson about resilience. While much was lost in the flames of that distant night, not everything perished. Some knowledge survived in other libraries, in the minds of scholars who escaped, in copies that existed in distant cities. Human drive to learn, to discover, to understand our world proved stronger than any single catastrophe. Even as the flames consumed those precious scrolls in Alexandria, other minds in other places continued the eternal human quest for knowledge. The light of inquiry, though dimmed by tragedy, was never completely extinguished. As we prepare to move forward in our journey through this ancient story, let us hold both the sadness of great loss and the hope of human persistence. The flames on the horizon of Alexandria remind us to cherish the knowledge we have, to preserve it carefully, and to continue the work of discovery that those ancient scholars began. Sleep now, and in your dreams, perhaps you will walk through the library halls as they were before the fire, surrounded by the whispered wisdom of ages, knowing that the human spirit of inquiry burns more brightly than any flame of destruction ever could. In the quiet aftermath of those terrible flames, when the smoke had finally cleared and the last embers had grown cold, something profound had vanished from our world, something that can never truly be measured, never fully comprehended, and never completely recovered. Tonight, as we settle into this gentle exploration of loss and wonder, let us walk gently through the shadows of what once was. Imagine, if you will, standing in what remains of that great library. The morning sun filters through broken stone, casting long shadows where towering shelves once stood. Your footsteps echo softly against marble floors that once knew the purposeful stride of scholars, the careful shuffle of elderly philosophers, the quick pace of young students rushing to their lessons. The silence is not empty, but full of absence, full of memory, full of possibility that will never be. In those vanished scrolls lay the complete works of Sophocles. We know today only 7 of his plays, yet he wrote over 100. Picture in your mind's eye those lost dramas, stories of human triumph and tragedy, wisdom about the nature of love and loss, insights into the Greek soul that might have changed how we understand ourselves today. Those words, once carefully inscribed on papyrus, once read aloud in amphitheaters, once copied by devoted scribes, are now only whispers in the wind. The mathematical treatises that burned contained discoveries we can barely imagine. Archimedes had calculated the movements of planets with startling accuracy, using methods that wouldn't be rediscovered for over 1,000 years. In those flames, formulas dissolved that might have advanced human understanding by centuries. Steam engines, perhaps, emerging in ancient Rome rather than industrial Britain. Mechanical computers clicking and whirring in Byzantine workshops. Instead of awaiting the 20th century, breathe slowly now and let your mind drift to the medical texts that turned to ash. Herophilos had mapped the human nervous system with exquisite detail, understanding the brain's connection to our senses in ways that would not be matched until the Renaissance. Ancient surgeons had developed techniques for cataract removal, for setting complex fractures, for treating ailments that would puzzle physicians for generations to come. In those scrolls were remedies drawn from plants now extinct, healing wisdom gathered from across the known world, observations about the human body that would have spared countless suffering. The maps and geographic treatises told stories of a world we can no longer see, detailed accounts of trade routes that connected distant civilizations, descriptions of cities that have long since crumbled to dust, careful measurements of coastlines that have shifted with time and tide. Eratosthenes had calculated the Earth's circumference with remarkable precision, but his methods and supporting evidence, all of it vanished. Those charts might have guided explorers to distant lands centuries earlier, connecting cultures in ways that could have changed the very course of human development. Think gently now of the historical accounts that fed those flames. Eyewitness testimonies of Alexander's campaigns, detailed records of daily life in ancient kingdoms, philosophical debates that raged through the corridors of learning, personal letters from scholars to their families, all transformed into smoke and memory. We glimpse the ancient world today through fragments, through the occasional papyrus discovered in a desert cave or a quote preserved in a later work. But imagine the richness of understanding we might possess if those complete histories had survived. The astronomical observations, recorded night after night by devoted stargazers, contained the patient work of centuries. They had tracked the movements of planets with meticulous care, predicted eclipses, mapped constellations that guided sailors across dark seas. In those calculations lay the seeds of space exploration, the mathematical foundation for understanding our place in the cosmos. Without those records, humanity had to begin again, rebuilding astronomical knowledge from scattered observations and distant memory. Poetry and literature, beyond our imagining, turned to ash that day. Epic tales of heroes we'll never know, love, songs and languages that have faded into silence, philosophical dialogues that might have shaped how we think about virtue, beauty, and truth. The complete works of poets whose names are now known only through brief mentions in other texts. Their verses, their insights into the human condition, their ways of capturing joy and sorrow in words, all lost to time and flame. Let your breathing slow as we consider the technological treatises that vanished. Ancient engineers had developed sophisticated machines, water clocks that marked time with precision, mechanical devices that could perform calculations, architectural techniques that allowed them to build structures of breathtaking beauty and strength. Those manuals, those step-by-step instructions, those accumulated centuries of practical wisdom, gone. Humanity would have to rediscover these arts through trial and error, through the slow accumulation of experience across generations. The philosophical works represent conversations about existence itself, questions about the nature of reality, debates about ethics and morality, explorations of what it means to live a good life, all recorded in careful script by thinkers whose names we may never know. These weren't merely academic exercises, but living attempts to understand the deepest mysteries of human existence. In losing them, we lost not just knowledge, but entire ways of thinking about ourselves and our place in the universe. Drift now into contemplation of what this loss means for us today. We stand at the beginning of the 21st century, proud of our scientific achievements, our technological marvels, our accumulated knowledge. Yet we must remember that we are not the first civilization to reach for the stars, to question our origins, to seek understanding of the natural world. We are, in many ways, still catching up to wisdom that was lost in those ancient flames. Consider how different our world might be if that great library had survived. Perhaps we would have landed on Mars alongside the ancient Romans. Perhaps diseases that plagued humanity for centuries would have been conquered by medieval physicians drawing on Alexandrian medical texts. Perhaps our understanding of mathematics and physics would be centuries ahead of where we are now. Yet in this loss, there is also something strangely beautiful. It reminds us that knowledge is fragile, that understanding must be cherished and protected. It teaches us humility, that even our greatest achievements may someday be forgotten. That wisdom can vanish as easily as smoke rising into the night sky. As you settle deeper into rest, hold gently in your mind the image of those lost scrolls. Each one contained the life's work of a human being not so different from ourselves, someone who wondered about the world, who asked questions, who sought to understand and to share that understanding with others. In losing those works, we lost not just information, but the very thoughts and dreams of countless individuals who contributed to the great human conversation about existence. The scholars who tended those scrolls knew they were guardians of something precious. They understood that knowledge, once lost, might never return. They worked by lamplight to preserve and copy, to translate and interpret, to keep alive the accumulated wisdom of their ancestors. Their careful dedication reminds us that we too are guardians of our own knowledge, our own understanding, our own contributions to the endless human quest for truth. Sleep now comes gently, carrying with it the weight of this beautiful loss. In your dreams, perhaps, you might walk through those vanished halls, run your fingers along shelves heavy with scrolls, sit in peaceful courtyards where ancient scholars once debated the mysteries of existence. In dreams, nothing is ever truly lost. The library lives on, complete and whole, waiting for us in the realm of imagination, where all possibilities remain forever alive. In the gentle darkness of night, when the world grows quiet and our minds begin to wander toward rest, we can sometimes hear the softest whispers carried on invisible winds. Tonight, as we continue our peaceful journey through time, let us listen for those whispers that rose from the ashes of Alexandria, for not everything was lost, not every flame consumed all it touched. And sometimes the most precious seeds of knowledge find ways to survive even the most devastating storms. Picture yourself walking through a moonlit courtyard in medieval Cordoba, centuries after the great library fell. The air is warm and still, scented with orange blossoms and the faint smell of parchment and ink. In chambers lit by oil lamps, scholars bend over manuscripts, their fingers tracing words in Arabic script. They are translating, preserving, breathing new life into texts that somehow escaped the flames of Alexandria. These patient scribes have become the unlikely inheritors of ancient wisdom, guardians of knowledge that traveled like seeds on the wind, finding new soil in which to grow. Some scrolls, it seems, had been copied before the fires came. Wealthy collectors in distant cities had acquired duplicates of precious texts. Trading ships had carried manuscripts to far-off ports, where local scholars translated them into Persian, Sanskrit, Syriac. Private libraries in Rome, Athens, and Constantinople held copies of works that no longer existed in their original home. Like scattered stars in the night sky, these surviving texts twinkled in the darkness that followed Alexandria's fall. Rest your breathing now, and let your mind drift to the great Islamic libraries that rose in the centuries following. In Baghdad, the House of Wisdom became a new beacon of learning, where scholars from many cultures gathered to read, debate, and preserve the wisdom of the past. They had rescued mathematical treatises, medical texts, astronomical observations, fragments of Alexandrian knowledge that had made their way eastward along trade routes and through the hands of traveling scholars. Doc imagined the quiet satisfaction of a translator working late into the night, oil lamp flickering as he carefully renders Euclid's geometry into Arabic, knowing that he is saving these precious insights for future generations. His work ensures that the mathematical principles discovered in ancient Alexandria will survive, will teach, will inspire new discoveries. Each word he writes is a victory against the darkness of forgotten knowledge. The monasteries of Ireland and northern Britain became unexpected sanctuaries for classical learning. Monks who had never seen the Mediterranean copied Latin texts with devoted precision, their scriptoriums filled with the soft scratch of quill on parchment. Some of these texts trace their lineage back to Alexandria, traveling through Rome, across the continent, finding safety in remote abbeys where patient hands ensured their survival. These holy men, working in cold stone chambers, became unwitting links in a chain of preservation that stretched back to the great library's golden age. Let your mind wander now to the scholars of medieval Spain, where Christian, Muslim, and Jewish. Thinkers worked side by side to translate ancient texts. They understood that wisdom knew no boundaries of faith or culture. In cities like Toledo, translation schools hummed with activity as scholars rendered Arabic texts into Latin, Hebrew into Romance languages, preserving and spreading the knowledge that had somehow survived from antiquity. Each translation was an act of rescue. Each manuscript copied was a small victory against oblivion. The Byzantine Empire, heir to Rome's Eastern legacy, maintained libraries where classical texts found continued life. In Constantinople's Imperial Library, carefully guarded manuscripts preserved elements of ancient learning that would otherwise have vanished entirely. Court scholars studied these texts, commented on them, ensured their transmission to future generations. These Byzantine custodians of knowledge understood themselves to be temporary guardians of an eternal flame of learning. Breathe slowly and deeply as we consider how knowledge finds unexpected pathways to survival. Some of Alexandria's astronomical wisdom survived in the calendars used by distant people. Agricultural techniques described in ancient treatises lived on in the practices of farmers who had never heard of the great library. Medical knowledge persisted in the remedies passed down through generations of healers, each preserving fragments of ancient understanding in their own traditions. The works of Aristotle, studied and copied in Alexandria, found new homes in the Ummah. Libraries of Baghdad and Cordoba. His ideas about natural philosophy, ethics, and logic survived to influence medieval Islamic scholars like Averroes and Avicenna, who in turn would inspire Christian thinkers like Thomas Aquinas. The intellectual thread that began in ancient Greece was strengthened in Alexandria, survived the flames, and continued weaving through centuries of human thought. Picture now the moment when these preserved texts began their journey back to the West. Crusaders returning from the Holy Land carried manuscripts in their saddlebags. Italian merchants trading in the eastern Mediterranean brought back books along with spices and silk. Gradually, the knowledge that had been preserved in Islamic libraries began to filter back into European universities, where eager scholars rediscovered the wisdom of their own ancestors. The University of Salerno, famous for its medical school, drew upon texts that ultimately traced back to the physicians who had once worked in Alexandria. Students learning anatomy and surgery were unknowingly heir to knowledge that had survived impossible odds, preserved through centuries by scholars who understood the precious nature of hard-won understanding. Each successful treatment, each medical insight, carried within it whispers of ancient wisdom. Let your thoughts drift gently to the translators of the 12th century, scholars like Gerard of Cremona, who spent their lives rendering Arabic scientific texts back into Latin. They worked with passionate dedication, knowing that they were recovering treasures that had been presumed lost forever. Their careful work ensured that mathematical treatises, astronomical tables, and philosophical works would once again nourish European intellectual life. The printing press, when it finally arrived, became the ultimate preserver of these rescued texts. Works that had survived as single manuscripts, vulnerable to fire, flood, or simple decay, could now be multiplied endlessly. The fragile chain of copying by hand was replaced by mechanical reproduction that made knowledge virtually indestructible. Those whispers from Alexandria's ashes grew stronger with each printed page. Rest now in the knowledge that even in our modern age, scholars continue to discover fragments of ancient learning. Archaeological excavations occasionally uncover papyri that contain previously unknown works. Digital technology allows us to read manuscripts that were damaged beyond human sight, revealing text through advanced imaging techniques. The conversation with antiquity continues, each new discovery adding another whisper to our understanding of what was and what survived. Consider, as sleep approaches, how these surviving fragments change the world that received them. The rediscovery of Aristotle's complete works sparked the great intellectual awakening of the 13th century. Ancient mathematical texts inspired the Renaissance revolution in engineering and architecture. Medical treatises preserved through Islamic translation saved countless lives in medieval Europe. Each whisper from the ashes carried within it the power to transform entire civilizations. The scholars who preserved this knowledge often worked in difficult circumstances, political upheaval, religious persecution, economic hardship. Yet they understood that they were guardians of something larger than themselves. They recognized that knowledge belongs not to any single people or time, but to all of humanity. Their patient work ensured that the flames of Alexandria, terrible as they were, could not completely erase the accumulated wisdom of ages. As you settle deeper into peaceful rest, hold in your mind the image of knowledge as a living thing, something that can hibernate in the most unlikely places, that can travel vast distances, that can wait patiently for the right moment to flourish again. The Library of Alexandria may have burned, but the knowledge it contained proved to have deep roots and strong wings. In your dreams tonight, you might hear those whispers yourself, the soft voice of an ancient geometer explaining the properties of triangles, the gentle instruction of a long-dead physician describing the circulation of blood, the patient words of a philosopher contemplating the nature of virtue. These voices survived the flames, crossed centuries and continents, and continue to speak to us today. Sleep comes now with the comfort of knowing that human wisdom, like life itself, finds ways to endure. The ashes of Alexandria scattered on winds that carried them to every corner of the world, and in each place they landed, something beautiful began to grow again. In the soft glow of evening light, as our world settles into the rhythm of another night, we find ourselves surrounded by something remarkable, the living legacy of that ancient dream that was Alexandria. Tonight, let us take a gentle journey through our modern landscape and discover how the spirit of that great library continues to breathe, to grow, to illuminate our contemporary world in ways both seen and unseen. Close your eyes and imagine walking through the marble corridors of the Jefferson Building, the crown jewel of the Library of Congress in Washington. Your footsteps echo softly through halls lined with reading rooms where scholars bend over ancient texts and cutting-edge research alike. Here in this temple to human knowledge, the dream of Alexandria lives on. Over 17 million books, countless manuscripts, recordings, photographs, and maps fill these halls, a collection that would have awed even the most ambitious Ptolemaic librarian. The vision is the same that inspired those ancient rulers of Egypt, to gather all human knowledge under one roof, to make it accessible to those who seek understanding, to preserve for future generations the accumulated wisdom of our species. Every day, hundreds of researchers walk these halls, driven by the same curiosity that once filled the courtyards of ancient Alexandria with eager voices and passionate debates. Let your mind drift now across the Atlantic to the Bibliothèque Nationale de France in Paris, where Francois Mitterrand's ambitious vision created 4 glass towers that reach toward the sky like modern lighthouses of learning. In climate-controlled chambers beneath these towers, millions of volumes remain in perfect preservation, novels and poetry, scientific treatises and historical documents, each one a small flame in the great constellation of human thought. Here, just as in ancient Alexandria, scholars from around the world gather to pursue knowledge. The reading rooms hum with the quiet intensity of research, the gentle rustle of pages turning, the soft click of keyboards as modern scribes record their discoveries. The methods have changed, but the essential spirit remains the same. Human beings coming together in pursuit of understanding, building upon the work of those who came before. Breathe slowly and let yourself imagine the British Library in London, where the accumulated treasures of centuries remain in careful order. Manuscripts that survived the fall of empires, books that crossed oceans in the holds of ships, documents that witnessed the great turning points of history, all preserved here with the same devotion that ancient librarians once showed their papyrus scrolls. The Magna Carta shares space with Beatles' lyrics. Leonardo's notebooks rest near contemporary scientific journals, past and present, united in the democracy of knowledge. But perhaps the most remarkable echo of Alexandria exists not in any physical building, but in the vast digital realm that connects every corner of our planet. Think gently now of the Internet Archive, that modern miracle based in San Francisco, where dedicated technicians work day and night to preserve the entirety of human digital expression. Like the scribes of Alexandria, who copied precious texts. To ensure their survival, these digital preservationists capture websites, books, movies, and music, creating backups against the inevitable decay of electronic media. The Wayback Machine, that remarkable tool that allows us to see the Internet as it was years or even decades ago, serves the same function as those careful copies made by ancient scholars, ensuring that knowledge, once created, is not lost to the passage of time. Every saved web page is a digital papyrus scroll, every archived video a modern equivalent of those precious texts that once lined the shelves of the great library. Consider now how university libraries around the world continue Alexandria's mission in their own unique ways. Harvard's Whittier Library, with its millions of volumes. Yale's Beinecke Rare Book Library, with its translucent marble walls. Oxford's Bodleian Library, where scholars have worked for over 4 centuries. Each represents a small Alexandria, a gathering place for those who seek to understand the world through the accumulated wisdom of ages. Let your thoughts wander to the countless public libraries that dot our landscape, from the largest metropolitan systems to the smallest rural branches. Each one carries within it the democratic ideal that knowledge should be available to all, regardless of wealth or status. The librarian helping a child find their first chapter book. The reference specialist guiding a researcher to obscure historical documents. The digital literacy instructor teaching seniors to navigate online databases. All of these modern servants of knowledge carry forward the mission of those ancient Alexandrian scholars. The digital revolution has created possibilities that would have seemed magical to the librarians of antiquity. Google Books Project scans millions of volumes, making them searchable and accessible from anywhere on Earth. HathiTrust Digital Library provides access to millions of items from research. Libraries around the world. JSTOR opens the doors of academic research to students and scholars globally. Each of these initiatives represents the ancient dream made manifest, universal access to human knowledge, limited only by curiosity and the desire to learn. Rest. Now in contemplation of how modern technology serves the same preservationist impulse that drove ancient librarians to their painstaking copying work. Digital preservation specialists use techniques that would astound their predecessors, creating multiple redundant copies stored in geographically diverse locations, ensuring that no single disaster can erase important information. The DNA of every book, every article, every image is recorded and replicated, creating an almost indestructible network of human knowledge. Think gently of Wikipedia, that remarkable experiment in collaborative knowledge creation. Like the diverse community of scholars who once worked in Alexandria, Greeks and Egyptians, Romans and Persians, all contributing their expertise to the common store of learning. Wikipedia draws on contributors from every corner of the globe. Millions of people, working without payment or recognition, create and maintain articles on every conceivable subject, driven by the same passion for sharing knowledge that motivated their ancient predecessors. The scientific databases that serve. Today's researchers echo the careful cataloging systems developed in ancient Alexandria. PubMed provides access to millions of biomedical research papers, Archive serves as a repository for physics and mathematics preprints, the astrophysics data. System helps astronomers navigate the literature of their field. Each represents the modern equivalent of those subject-specific collections that made Alexandria the intellectual center of the ancient world. Let your mind rest now on the profound continuity between past and present. The questions that drove ancient scholars to Alexandria. How does the human body work? What are the movements of the planets? How should we live good lives? What is the nature of reality itself? These same questions continue to draw researchers to libraries and laboratories today. The tools have changed. The scope has expanded beyond anything the ancients could have imagined. But the fundamental human drive to understand and to share, that understanding remains constant. Consider how modern libraries serve not just as repositories of information, but as community gathering places, much as Alexandria once served as a meeting ground for diverse cultures and ideas. Children's story hours, lecture series, maker spaces where people learn new technologies, meeting rooms where community groups plan local initiatives. All of these activities would have been familiar to the scholars who once walked Alexandria's halls, engaging with their community while pursuing their individual research. The challenges facing modern librarians echo those confronted by their ancient counterparts. How do we preserve fragile materials against the ravages of time? How do we provide access while protecting rare and valuable items? How do we organize vast quantities of information so that researchers can find what they need? How do we adapt to changing technologies while maintaining our core mission? These questions would have resonated deeply with the librarians who once tended Alexandria's precious scrolls. As sleep approaches, hold gently in your thoughts this beautiful truth, that Alexandria never truly died. Its spirit lives on in every library, every database, every moment when knowledge passes from one person to another. The great library's most important legacy was not its building or its collections, but its vision of what humanity could accomplish when knowledge was freely shared and carefully preserved. In your dreams tonight, you might find yourself walking through a library that is somehow both ancient and modern, where papyrus scrolls rest beside computer terminals, where scholars in togas discuss research with scientists in lab coats, where the boundaries between past and present dissolve in the shared pursuit of understanding. This dream library exists wherever people gather to learn, to discover, to preserve the precious gift of human knowledge for those who will come after us. Sleep comes now with the comforting knowledge that we are all inheritors of Alexandria's vision, all participants in humanity's greatest collaborative project, the endless quest to understand ourselves and our universe, and to pass that understanding on to future generations. In the quiet depths of night, when the world around us grows still and our thoughts turn inward toward the mysteries that have always captivated the human heart, we find ourselves part of something far greater than any single lifetime. Tonight, let us rest in the gentle understanding that we belong to an unbroken chain of seekers, stretching back through Alexandria to the very dawn of human consciousness, and forward into futures we can barely imagine. Close your eyes and feel yourself connected to this ancient lineage. Every question you have ever wondered about: why do the stars shine? How does love work? What makes a life meaningful? Where do we come from and where are we going? These same questions echoed through the corridors of Alexandria 23. Centuries ago, the scholars who walked those marble halls, who bent over papyrus by lamplight, who debated in sun-drenched courtyards, were driven by the identical curiosity that stirs in your own heart. Picture, if you will, an ancient astronomer, standing on Alexandria's lighthouse, gazing up at the night sky with wonder. He charts the movement of planets, records the positions of stars, tries to understand the grand celestial dance that unfolds above him each night. His tools are simple: wooden astrolabes, careful observations, mathematical calculations scratched on wax tablets? Yet his questions are eternal. What is our place in this vast cosmos? How do the heavens move? Are there other worlds beyond our sight? Now let your mind drift gently forward through time and see a modern astronomer at the Hubble Space Telescope Control Center, studying images of galaxies trillions of light years distant. Her tools are miraculous by ancient standards. Computers that can process unimaginable amounts of data. Telescopes that can see deeper into space than any ancient scholar dreamed possible. Yet her questions are the same. What is our place in this vast cosmos? How did the universe begin? Are we alone among the stars? Between these two seekers, separated by millennia, flows an unbroken river of human curiosity. The methods have evolved, the tools have grown more sophisticated, but the fundamental drive to understand remains constant. Each generation builds upon the discoveries of those who came before, adding new stones to a bridge of knowledge that spans the centuries. Breathe slowly and let yourself feel the weight of this continuity. The mathematics that guided ships across ancient seas evolved into the equations that guide spacecraft to distant planets. The medical knowledge preserved in Alexandrian scrolls grew into the sophisticated understanding that saves lives in modern hospitals. The philosophical questions debated in ancient academies continue to challenge thinkers in universities around the world. Rest now in contemplation of how knowledge grows like a great tree, each new discovery branching from insights that came before. Euclid's geometry, studied and refined in Alexandria, became the foundation for architecture and engineering that spans continents. Arabic numerals, preserved and transmitted by Islamic scholars, made possible the mathematical revolution that powers our digital age. Aristotle's careful observations of the natural world grew into the scientific method that has unlocked so many mysteries of existence. Think gently of the patient accumulation of understanding that connects past and future. Every measurement of a star's position, carefully recorded by ancient astronomers, contributed to our modern understanding of celestial mechanics. Every herbal remedy tested by ancient physicians added to the vast pharmacological knowledge that modern medicine draws upon. Every philosophical dialogue about justice and virtue informs the ethical discussions that guide our contemporary choices. The search for truth has always required both individual brilliance and collective effort. In Alexandria, scholars worked alone in their studies, but came together to share discoveries, to debate interpretations, to build upon each other's insights. Today, scientists collaborate across continents, sharing data instantly, building virtual communities of researchers who may never meet in person, but who share the ancient passion for understanding. Let your mind wander now to the technologies that serve this timeless quest. The particle accelerators that probe the fundamental nature of matter fulfill the same curiosity that drove ancient philosophers to wonder about the basic components of reality. The DNA sequencers that map the code of life answer questions about heredity and development that puzzled ancient physicians. The deep space telescopes that search for planets around distant stars continue the work of those who first asked whether we might not be alone in the universe. Consider how the very act of asking questions creates connections across time. When you wonder about the meaning of a dream, you join a conversation that began in ancient Mesopotamia and continues in modern psychology laboratories. When you puzzle over a moral dilemma, you participate in discussions that engage Socrates, that occupied medieval theologians, that challenge contemporary ethicists. When you look up at the night sky and feel awe at its vastness, you share an experience with every human being who has ever lived. The democratization of knowledge that began in Alexandria's public lectures and debates finds its ultimate expression in our connected world. A curious child in rural Africa can access the same scientific papers as researchers at Harvard. A retiree in small-town America can take online courses from professors at Oxford. The barriers that once limited learning to the wealthy and privileged have largely dissolved, fulfilling the ancient dream of knowledge available to all who seek it. Rest now in the understanding that uncertainty and wonder are not obstacles to overcome, but essential parts of the search for truth. The ancient scholars knew that every answer revealed new questions, that each discovery opened up vast territories of the unknown. Modern scientists embrace the same productive uncertainty, knowing that the questions we cannot yet answer are what drive continued exploration and discovery. The tools of inquiry continue to evolve in ways that would astound the ancient world. Artificial intelligence helps researchers process vast datasets, finding patterns that human minds alone could never detect. Virtual reality allows us to walk through ancient Rome or explore the surface of Mars. Genetic engineering gives us the Neolithic power to rewrite the code of life itself. Yet all of these miraculous capabilities serve the same fundamental purpose that drove the scholars of Alexandria: to understand, to learn, to push back the boundaries of the known. Think gently of how the search for truth has always been a collaborative endeavor that transcends individual limitations. No single person could contain all knowledge. No single lifetime could answer all questions. But together, across generations and cultures, humanity has built an ever-growing treasure of understanding. Each researcher adds their small contribution to a vast mosaic of knowledge that no one person could create alone. The passion for learning that filled Alexandria's halls with eager voices continues to drive students in classrooms around the world. Children asking why and how participate in the same fundamental activity as graduate students defending dissertations, as senior scientists presenting breakthrough discoveries. The age of the questioner matters less than the authenticity of their curiosity, the genuineness of their desire to understand. As sleep approaches, let yourself rest in the beautiful continuity of human inquiry. We are not isolated individuals, struggling alone with life's mysteries, but part of an ancient and ongoing conversation about existence itself. Every insight you gain, every moment of understanding you achieve, every question you ask adds to humanity's collective wisdom. In your dreams tonight, you might find yourself in a timeless library where past and future scholars work side by side, where ancient scrolls rest beside quantum computers, where Archimedes compares notes with Einstein, where the questions of yesterday merge seamlessly with the discoveries of tomorrow. This dream library exists wherever curiosity lives, wherever wonder survives, wherever human beings refuse to accept ignorance as the final answer. The search for truth is not a destination to be reached, but a journey to be traveled, not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be explored with ever deeper appreciation. We are all temporary custodians of this great human project, adding our own small light to the constellation of understanding that has been growing brighter since our species first looked up at the stars and wondered what they were. Sleep comes. Now, with the peaceful knowledge that you belong to this magnificent tradition, that your curiosity connects you to every seeker who has ever lived, and that the questions that stir your heart will continue to inspire generations yet to be born. And now, dear listener, as our journey through the lost wisdom of Alexandria draws to its gentle close, I invite you to step with me into a place that exists beyond time, beyond the flames that consumed those precious scrolls, beyond the sorrow of what was lost. Close your eyes now and feel yourself transported not to the Alexandria of ancient stone and papyrus, but to a library that lives eternal in the realm of dreams. Here, in this sacred space of the mind, nothing is ever truly lost. You find yourself standing at the threshold of an impossibly vast hall. The air is warm and carries the faintest scent of aged paper and myrrh, that ancient fragrance that once blessed the scrolls of the Ptolemies. Before you stretches row upon row of shelves, reaching up into gentle shadows, each one laden with the accumulated wisdom of countless generations. Your footsteps make no sound as you begin to walk forward. The floor beneath your feet feels smooth and cool, like a polished marble that once graced Alexandria's great halls. But this is warmer somehow, more welcoming, as if the very stones remember every scholar who ever walked these paths in search of truth. The light here is unlike any earthly illumination. It seems to emanate from the books themselves, a soft golden glow that pulses gently like a heartbeat, like the rhythm of your own breath as you move deeper into this sanctuary of dreams. Each shelf you pass holds wonders beyond measure, and though the writing on the spines shifts and changes in that fluid way of dreams, you sense somehow that you understand it all. Here, on this shelf to your right, rest the complete works of every philosopher who ever pondered the nature of existence. Their thoughts bloom in the golden air like flowers made of light, their questions and insights floating gently around you like whispered conversations between old friends. Socrates debates with Confucius, while Hypatia listens, nodding thoughtfully. Her eyes bright with the joy of discovery. You move on, your pace unhurried, your breathing deep and easy. Time has no meaning here in the Library of Dreams. There is only this eternal now, this perfect moment of discovery and peace. To your left, mathematical theorems dance in the air like constellations, their elegant proofs unfolding in streams of silver light. You watch as Euclid's geometry transforms into Archimedes' calculations, which flow seamlessly into discoveries yet to be made by minds yet to be born. The beauty of pure mathematics surrounds you like a gentle embrace, its perfect logic as soothing as a lullaby. Further along, you discover shelves devoted to the healing arts. Ancient medical texts stand side by side with scrolls containing remedies made from herbs that grew in gardens long since turned to dust. But here, in this place of eternal preservation, their wisdom lives on. You can almost smell the healing. Gardens of Alexandria almost hear the gentle voice of Herophilos as he taught his students to understand the miracle of the human body. The deeper you venture into this dreamland library, the more you begin to understand that you are not alone. Other figures move quietly through the halls, some clear and distinct, others mere shadows at the edge of vision. These are the eternal seekers, the souls who have always hungered for knowledge, who have carried the flame of curiosity through every age of human existence. An elderly woman with silver hair passes by, her arms full of astronomical charts that seem to map not just the stars we know, but stars from other skies, other times. She smiles at you kindly, and in her eyes you see the reflection of all the night skies that have ever inspired wonder in the human heart. Young man sits cross-legged on the floor between two towering shelves, reading from a scroll that unrolls endlessly in his lap. As you draw near, you realize he is reading the true history of our world, not just what was recorded, but what was felt, what was dreamed, what was hoped for by every generation that has walked upon the earth. You find yourself drawn to a circular chamber at the heart of the library, where the shelves form a perfect ring around a space filled with the softest, most comfortable seating imaginable. Cushions and reading chairs that seem to mold themselves to your exact needs, couches covered in fabrics that feel like clouds against your skin. In the center of this circle stands a single pedestal, and upon it remains an open book. But this is no ordinary book. Its pages are made of something finer than paper, clearer than glass, and the words written upon them seem to shift and change as you watch, as if the book is writing itself, adding new chapters, even as you observe. Settle into one of the impossibly comfortable chairs, feeling your body sink into its embrace, like settling into the most perfect bed after the longest day. From here, you can see that the words in the great book are not written in any single language, but in the universal tongue of understanding, the language that speaks directly to the heart without need for translation. The book tells the story of every dream ever dreamed, every hope ever cherished, every question ever asked in the darkness of night when the mind wanders free. It speaks of the child who looked up at the stars and wondered what lay beyond, of the student who stayed up late reading by candlelight, of the elder who passed down wisdom to the next generation. As you read, you begin to understand that this library, this eternal repository of dreams, is built not from stone and mortar, but from something far more enduring. It is constructed from human curiosity itself, from that irrepressible urge to know, to understand, to grow that burns in every human heart. The scholars of Alexandria built their great library from papyrus and ink, but they were really building something much grander. They were adding their stones to this eternal edifice, this temple of the mind that can never be burned, never be destroyed, because it lives in the realm of pure thought, pure wonder. You feel your eyelids growing heavy now, but this is not the weight of exhaustion. This is the gentle pull of perfect peace, the settling sensation of a mind that has found exactly where it belongs. The golden light of the library grows softer, more diffused, like sunlight filtering through morning mist. The voices of the dream. Scholars grow quieter, their conversations becoming a gentle murmur that sounds like wind through autumn leaves, like waves lapping at a distant shore, like the whispered lullabies of every mother who ever sang a child to sleep. You allow the great book to close gently in your lap, though you know that when you return, it will open to exactly the page you need to read. This is the magic of the dream library. It gives you exactly what your soul requires, exactly when you need it most. As you settle deeper into your flesh, you feel the boundaries between yourself and this eternal library beginning to blur in the most wonderful way. You are not just visiting this place of infinite wisdom, you are part of it. Every question you have ever asked, every wonder you have ever felt, every moment of curiosity or learning or growth has added another book to these endless shelves. The library grows around you and within you, its gentle rhythm matching the rhythm of your breathing, its peaceful silence harmonizing with the quiet beating of your heart. You understand now that Alexandria was never truly lost, because its spirit lives on in every person who seeks to understand, to learn, to grow. You are the library now, and the library is you. The wisdom of ages flows through your dreams like a river of golden light, carrying you gently toward the deepest, most restorative sleep. Every breath you take adds another scroll to the endless collection. Every heartbeat writes another line in the great book of human understanding. The last thing you see before sleep claims you completely is a figure approaching through the gentle golden haze. It might be Hypatia herself, or perhaps it is simply the embodiment of all learning, all wisdom, all the patient love that guides seekers toward truth. She places a gentle hand on your forehead, and her touch is cool and comforting, like a grandmother's. "Blessing. Sleep now, dear dreamer," she whispers, and her voice is like the sound of pages turning in a beloved book. Rest in the knowledge that you are part of something eternal, something beautiful, something that no fire can ever destroy. The library lives on in you, and you live on in the library forever and always. The golden light fades to the softest silver, then to the deep velvet of perfect night. But even in this darkness, you can feel the presence of the eternal library all around you, its infinite wisdom cradling you like the gentlest embrace. Here, in the space between waking and sleeping, between question and answer, between what was lost and what can never be destroyed, you find the deepest peace. The dream library watches over your slumber, and in your dreams, you walk forever through halls of infinite wonder, forever learning, forever growing, forever part of humanity's eternal quest for truth. Sleep peacefully now, knowing that when morning comes, you carry within you all the wisdom of ages, all the dreams of every seeker who ever lived. You are the inheritor of Alexandria's true treasure, not the scrolls that burn, but the unquenchable human desire to understand our world and our place within it. And so, dear friend, our journey together through the lost halls of Alexandria comes to its peaceful end. You have walked with me through time itself, from the brilliant shores of ancient Egypt to the eternal library that lives now in your dreams and in your heart. Tonight, as you rest in the comfort of your own bed, in your own time, remember that you carry something precious with you. You carry the spirit of every scholar who ever reads a lamp against the darkness to read just one more page. You carry the curiosity of every student who ever asked a question that had never been asked before. You carry the hope of every teacher who ever believed that knowledge, once shared, becomes immortal. The great Library of Alexandria may have burned, but its true treasure was never the papyrus or the ink. It was the wonder in human eyes when understanding dawned. It was the joy of discovery that made scholars work through the night by flickering flame. It was the belief that somewhere, somehow, there were answers to the questions that have puzzled humanity since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what they might be. That treasure burns still, gentle and warm, in the quiet moments before sleep, when your mind is free to wander where it will. It glows gently in the satisfaction of a book well read, in the pleasure of a mystery solved, in the simple joy of learning something new about this beautiful, complex world we share. As your breathing grows slower and deeper, as your thoughts become like whispers on a warm evening breeze, know that you are part of an unbroken chain that stretches back to those ancient halls beside the Mediterranean Sea. Every person who has ever wondered, who has ever questioned, who has ever sought to understand rather than simply accept, is your companion in this timeless quest for truth. The scholars of Alexandria would be pleased to know that their work continues in you, in your children, in every generation that refuses to let wonder die. They would smile to see how far their dream has traveled, how the light they kindled has spread across continents and centuries, growing brighter with each passing age. Sleep peacefully now, knowing that tomorrow will bring new questions to explore, new wonders to discover, new connections to make between the wisdom of the past and the possibilities of the future. But tonight is for rest, for letting your mind drift gently on currents of memory and dreams. The Library of Dreams keeps its vigil while you sleep, its golden light watching over all who seek, all who wonder, all who believe that in knowledge and understanding we find our truest home. May your dreams be filled with the rustling of ancient pages and the whisper of wisdom, carried on night winds from shores far away and times long past. Thank you for joining me in this quiet journey through the corridors of memory and imagination. Thank you for keeping alive the flame that those ancient scholars lit so long ago. Thank you for being part of humanity's most beautiful story, the story of our endless, joyful search for truth. Until we meet again in the realm of dreams and wonder, rest well, dear seeker. Rest well, gentle scholar. Rest well, keeper of the eternal flame of curiosity that burns forever in the human heart. Sweet dreams, and may they carry you safely through the night on wings of ancient wisdom and timeless peace.